So our community, just like the rest of the world, is trying to figure out how to live in this historic, fraught moment in history. So we offered a survey a couple weeks ago. We sent out a bunch of questions to our community, and we were very excited about the response rate. We received responses from probably about a quarter of our entire community here in Kittery Point. It was fabulous. Thank you all who participated. For me, one of the most important questions we asked was, what are the needs of your household in this moment? And overwhelmingly, the two biggest responses that came back are, I feel the need to belong somewhere right now, and I feel the need to have a sense of purpose during this pandemic. The need for belonging and the need for purpose. And this was very good news to your pastor, because these are both things that a faith community is uniquely suited to offer. A sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. How we find our sense of belonging and our sense of purpose is determined by our relationship with God. How we are in relationship with God shapes how we understand what it means to belong to God's people and what it means we are to do with our lives. And there are faith leaders stretching back decades and decades and decades who have said that if a faith community can come to a common consensus of how they as a people are in relationship with God, it will make it possible for that faith community to operate as a united and diverse ecology of vocation. Big words. So for the next few Sundays, we are going to be exploring possible relationships with God so that we as a community can all say together what makes sense to us as a whole people. Is the way I relate to God the same as the way you relate to God? Because it falls upon us as a community to be able to say together with one voice, this is who God is for us, and that determines who and whose we are in this world, both individually and corporately. So what does it mean to be in relationship with God, the Creator? When we think of God, the Creator, what does it mean to attribute God with the power of creation? And what does it mean for those of us who are created by God? What does this relationship look like? We know that through the love of covenant, God calls us to be partners in God's creation. And that's where our real work today begins, by exploring what it means to be partners in creating this world with our God. I love autumn. I love the fall. I always have. I grew up in a small town in the southeast corner of Arizona. So needless to say, fall was not something we really had a chance to celebrate very well. There were no leaves that really changed colors. It just, one day the leaves were there, the next day they fell on the ground. There was not a good way of celebrating fall where I grew up. But when I went to college, at Beloit College in Wisconsin, oh, I was enthralled. I was only there a couple weeks before the leaves started changing and the cool air came in. It wasn't summer anymore, but it also wasn't quite winter. And I loved running through the leaves. I was 18 years old, and I'm sure everyone thought I looked ridiculous, but I didn't care. I was running through leaves, jumping in leaf piles. I loved it. Picking apples, pumpkin soup in actual pumpkins. These are all things that I have loved from the very beginning. Fall is the season where my spirit really comes to life. Just yesterday, I had the honor of going with Ann Peters' family to lay her remains to rest at her family cemetery over in New Hampshire. And there were just all these trees surrounding me and leaves falling from everywhere, beautiful bright colors flying through the air. I tried to take many videos. None of them worked. None of them panned out. So I'm just going to invite all of you to just imagine, close your eyes, imagine those bright, brilliant colors. Maybe you don't even have to imagine. Maybe you can just look out your window, see those colors, see those leaves falling. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. God created that. God didn't just create trees that go into hibernation once a year. I believe God created every single speck of color on every single one of those leaves. These leaves that did not exist a year ago and will not exist a year from now. These beautiful, bright colors, just here for our delight, to give us a sense of change, a sense of the new on the horizon. Not everyone at Beloit shared my love of fall. So at Beloit, when I got there, there was a tradition called Spring Day. Spring Day was a particular Wednesday every April, where after the long, cold, hard season of winter, the school canceled all classes, all lectures, all serious business, and they threw a carnival for any and all who wanted to come. And so on that spring day in April, there were hundreds of people milling about the entire campus. You would never know it as a college campus on that day. It always looked like kind of a cheap Disneyland. Like it was just rides and games and activities and people as far as the eye could see. People came out of everywhere for Spring Day and they were so excited. Well, my senior year of college, I became a head RA. And one of the only responsibilities I had as a head RA was to throw a big campus-wide event once a semester. And so for the fall semester, I thought, how cool would it be if we have not just a spring day this year, but a fall day, an autumn day? And I all the other RAs that I was in charge of, I was like, we're going to rake leaves and we're going to build big leaf piles. We're going to have a pumpkin carving contest. We'll do a sacred reading of Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. We'll build scarecrows and we'll have apple cider. Oh, I was so excited. And the RAs that I was working with all said, okay, I guess. And sure enough, all that work and all the money that we had to invest, all of it went into creating Fall Day on a particular Saturday. And in my mind, I was like, this is great. We're doing it on a Saturday this year. By next year, it'll be on a Wednesday. We'll cancel classes for that day. It'll be great. Literally no one showed up. I mean, we held it in the middle of campus. In order to get to the dining hall, you had to come to the event. No one came. It was almost as if they all got the memo to eat out that day. We all love spring. New life, new energy, green stuff, pretty stuff, things bursting into bloom and into new life. We love spring. Fall is a little bit more difficult. But it doesn't matter if you prefer spring or if you prefer fall or summer or winter. It doesn't matter. What matters is noticing what those proclivities mean for you and your spirit. It doesn't matter what season you feel most at home in. That's information for you to use to figure out how you relate to reality, how you relate to God, the Creator. Do you get most excited when God is creating brand new, beautiful, innocent, early things? Do you get excited when God is creating beautiful fall colors? Plants going into hibernation, plants dying so that something new can grow in the new year. You are beloved, you belong, you are holy, no matter what season you feel most at home in. But what season you feel most at home in says a lot about your relationship to God, the Creator. This week, our wonderful Bible study teacher, Sybil Becker, she offered a fantastic question to our Bible study. She asked us, imagine that you were alive in Jesus's time. Who would you have followed? Would you have followed Jesus, the itinerant carpenter/rabbi who traveled around and broke all the rules to welcome all Israel's lost sheep back to the fold? Or would you have worshiped the institutional religion of your country and your family? Would you have worshiped the way your ancestors had for hundreds of years? It's a fantastic question. Because again, there is no right or wrong answer. The answer has a lot more to do with each and every one of us than it has to do with being right or wrong. If you feel a relationship to God that says God goes in search of all the lost sheep, all the people who have been traditionally excluded from religion and society, all the people struggling to find a way of providing for themselves and finding hope in something new. If that resonates with you, if that's your relationship with God, then yeah, you probably would have followed Jesus. And if your relationship with God has more to do with giving thanks for all that is, being rooted in a sense of tradition and continuity, proclaiming that God is the foundation of all the earth, and the way the earth is today is the way God intends it. If that resonates with you, if that gives you a sense of belonging and purpose, then you probably would have worshiped in the institutional faith of your ancestors. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just discovering what your relationship with God looks like. And because God, the Creator, is the God of life, all of life, it means God is present in every season. It means God is present in every single form of worship, whether we are outside or inside, joined together in the sanctuary, at home by ourselves during a pandemic. God is present in all of it because God has created all of it. These questions, they illuminate the fact that how we approach God influences how God approaches us. It's a dynamic. It's a relationship. It's mutual. Have you ever just loved someone so much who just couldn't get their act together? Have you ever just been so in love with someone? You're like, I love you, I support you, I'm with you. Gosh, you keep disappointing me all the time. We keep being on different pages all the time. We can't see eye to eye hardly ever. More often than not, we have that feeling because of a one-way relationship. Because of a relationship where one partner is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. As soon as we have a mutual relationship, as soon as we start giving and receiving in equal measure, we start to have a new sense of where we belong and what purpose we can find in our lives. It is true, God has created everything. It is also true, according to our faith, that God has called us into covenant to be partners in creation. And if we feel out of sync with creation, if we feel apart from reality, if we feel like the world is descending into chaos and we don't understand where we fit, it is not because you are doing anything wrong. It is not because you believe the wrong thing. It's because God is doing a new thing. And God moves faster than we do. God's creation moves faster than humans can keep up with. In talking with my own therapist earlier this week, she reminded me of the need for human beings to grieve. Autumn is a time of grieving. All the promise of spring, all the hope of summer, all the things that we just prayed would come into being that never did. Autumn is a wonderful, beautiful time to start letting go of those things. To start saying, God is the God of creation and I am not. Fall is a beautiful time to start weeping and mourning what has been and what has been lost. Because without fall and winter, there can be no spring and summer. Without grieving, without experiencing those deep lows, that heavy sadness, we have no hope of ever experiencing the mountaintop highs of joy and celebration, heaven and communion. We really do need both. We need to be able to grieve and celebrate in equal measure. What does it mean to be partners in God's creation? It means to plant and to harvest. It means to grow and to wither. Jesus offers himself as the vine, the true vine, through which all good fruits, joy, and service and love can be known. And if you have a hard time feeling that love and service and joy are real in the world, again, you're not doing anything wrong. We actually have a spiritual understanding of what this means. It's called the wilderness. Wilderness space is the space that God creates so that new things can happen. When the people Israel were freed from slavery in Egypt, it began with wilderness. It began with going out into the wild, where things didn't always make sense, where there were no strict rules, where there was no society, no way of getting water. They had to figure it all out by trusting in God with every step. And how did God repay them? Bread from heaven. Nourishment out of thin air. God the Creator does this. What does it mean to partner with God the Creator? It means to enter into every wilderness experience. Every time our souls are crying out for certainty and control, answers, procedures, policies, every time that we are crying out for these things, we need to know it's God creating a space where something new can happen. And it's possible that our biggest task in that space is to grieve, to be like beautiful leaves falling from trees, so that something new can grow in the next season. I have one final question for you today. Where were you in the month of September in the year 2015? It's a very specific question. Where were you in the month of September in the year 2015? I'm willing to bet that unless you had a huge life event occur that month, you probably don't really know. You probably have a sense of where you were living, the general region of the world in which you were occupying. But if you're like me, you don't have too many specific memories about that particular month and that particular year. What's important for you to know is that it was during that month that every single one of us who was alive, every human being who was alive in September of 2015, we together did something really remarkable, something that no other human beings in the history of creation have ever done. We entered into a new planet. It was in that month of September 2015 that the Earth's atmosphere was filled with 400 parts per million of carbon permanently. That changed the chemistry for the entire planet we live on. The last time there was this much carbon in the air was millions of years before humans ever came into existence. If the last 5 years have felt chaotic, if they have felt like we don't know what terrible thing will happen next, whether it be flood or fire or pandemic, disease or disaster or catastrophe, it's because we live on a different planet than what God originally created. Before we can make sense of that, I think we have to grieve. I think we have to grieve what is lost and reclaim our sense of partnership with God. We help to make the world in which we live. God, the Creator, has called us to do so. And if we would like a brighter future for the next generations, it is time that we start finding purpose and belonging in our partnership as God's co-creators in this world. And with that, I invite you to join me at the communion table so we can practice together what it means to grieve and what it means to be invited to create anew.